Data Correlation Notes, Nicholas Fisher, October 5, 1971, internal use only. The Azathoth stones were recovered from the African Congo by anthropologist and occultist Professor Hansen Millstone, formerly of Miskatonic University, during his third expedition to what he termed the Dark Continent in 1923. There are 10 stones in total, each carved into a distinct likeness. The statuettes stand roughly 8 inches tall and weigh approximately 2 pounds apiece. Their surface is a dull black, and the carvings have been muted by age, their features worn smooth. The following has been pieced together and verified from notes penned by Harlan Waits regarding Millstone's published work, the Nai-Hargo Codex, along with various journal entries, published papers, periodicals, and records obtained through university archives and other sources. I have also examined portions of John Dee's translation of the Kitab al-Azif and included direct quotations where appropriate. For the record, I have been unable to obtain a formal copy of Millstone's Nai-Hargo Codex. Letters and calls to the original publisher have gone unanswered. The only physical copy I have been close to was destroyed in a fire. The history of the stones was first related to Professor Millstone by a Maasai tribal elder during his initial expedition to Africa in 1911. The elder spoke of the day of the great fire in the sky. Millstone interpreted this as a meteor shower and dated it to 1027 BC. At each impact site, and for roughly a mile surrounding, the land died. Trees withered, grass blackened, watering holes turned brackish, and wildlife avoided the region. The elder further explained that after this celestial event, an unnamed Maasai shaman told his chieftain that Ngai Nanyoki had vomited Nkarewa upon the Nkop. Interpreted, Ngai Nanyoki, their sky god of drought and hardship. Nkop, the land, and Nkarewa, meaning stones. The shaman claimed the stones called to him, whispering dark secrets in dreams from afar, showing him other worlds. He told the chief, Ngai showed the red face, opened the sky so I could see it had no shape, end, or mercy. The sky twisted like a wounded thing, and the light burned wrong. He insisted the stones must be claimed. If he did not find them, shape them, and imprison their power within those forms, the land and the Maasai would perish. Millstone records, the sky would fall toward the Nkop, and the world would become sick. The shaman requested a hut be built high on a rocky hill above the canopy. There he fasted and awaited the stones. 10 men of the tribe, all considered infirm, were chosen to retrieve them from the necrotic impact sites. None returned. As the sun set, those waiting below heard chanting in an unknown tongue, along with hammering and cracking stone. The chanting became shrieks, continuing into the night and fading only with dawn. After a full day and night, 3 warriors ascended the ridge. They found the remains of the 10 men, headless, their bones picked clean, and in places, gnawed. The shaman lay inside the hut, his face streaked with dried blood and tears, his stomach distended from consumed flesh and organs. He could not move and lay attempting to scream, producing only a hoarse, blood-foamed whisper. At the far wall stood an altar of stones, earth, vines, and the 10 severed heads. Upon it stood the night-black sky stones, carved into abominations wholly alien to the tribesmen. According to the account, the warriors, as one, drove their spears through the shaman's throat and abandoned the hut where it stood. Though the legend passed through generations, neither the village's location nor that of the Nkang U El Tau Toman, House of the 10 Heads, or possibly House where 10 Heads see, was preserved in the oral tradition, much to Millstone's frustration. After hearing the tale, Millstone returned repeatedly to Africa in search of the hut and the stones. From available evidence, he believed he understood their true origin through a fragment of John Dee's translation of Al-Hazred's Kitab al-Azif. While contemporaries dismissed the story as myth, at most conceding a meteor shower, Millstone remained convinced the stones held far greater significance. In Dee's fragment, an aligning of spheres is mentioned, an event that opened a way to, and here I am quoting Dee's translation, the nucleus of the cosmos, a place outside of space and time, where the demon sultan, ruler of the outer gods, he that amorphous blight of nethermost confusion which blasphemes and bubbles at the center of all infinity, the thing that men have named Azathoth, resides. Millstone believed that with this path opened, Azathoth reached out blindly, its tendrils probing through space and time, spreading madness, deformity, and death. As its grasp neared Earth, the alignment shifted and the path closed. He theorized that Azathoth had been on the verge of contact and that, when the way shut, a portion of it remained behind, fragments of the mindless god falling to Earth as petrified mass. These became the stones recovered by the Maasai. Millstone believed the shaman carved Azathoth's petrified flesh, each statuette serving as a link to the blind idiot god, Lord of all things. Millstone presented these theories, naming them the Azathoth stones, to archaeologists and occultists in pursuit of funding for more expeditions. He received only ridicule, his reputation collapsed, and much of his family's wealth was spent. As he neared abandonment of the effort, he was approached by a wealthy recluse calling himself Houston Winthrop, who financed the expedition under the condition that the stones be delivered to him immediately upon Millstone's return. We are all too familiar with Winthrop. Little is known of this final expedition. 2 facts have been confirmed. Of 8 men, only Millstone returned, echoing the outcome of his first expedition, and he did locate the stones, as evidenced by fragments of his journal and contemporaneous audio recordings. Through great cost and some intimidation, I obtained several lacquer dictaphone discs containing Millstone's recorded voice, now held in the archives with his dictaphone machine. The disc, catalogued as File LD-1, contains Millstone recounting the day he acquired the stones. Playing now.
August 1923, Saturday, the 4th. Though the setting sun lay bloody and wavering on the western ridge, I cast no shadow upon the ground. I looked to the sky, and for a moment I fancied I saw a yawning black abyss. A sense of acceleration, as if I were bodily drawn to the center of all things. I began to hear the beating of drums and the thin, monotonous whine of flutes. I tore my gaze away, lest the dizziness overtake me. The hut stood as the boorish, apish man who called himself a chief described it. It seemed mostly untouched by time. There, too, lay the headless and chewed skeletal remains of the 10 Maasai. I entered the hut, and I will say with honesty that I felt no shock to see the shaman, nor to see that life still clung to him after 3,000 years. Still trying to scream with his prodigious and foam-flecked lips he was. His scantily clad body was covered in a thick layer of dust, yet his throat was still a red ruin, the blood mixing with the grime to produce a dark crimson paste, wholly unappetizing to look upon. Stomach stretched, hands, rictus claws, worn to bloody nubs as he dug at the earth he lay upon, endlessly. His eyes fixed, but seeing beyond, perhaps to the black throne of chaos itself? Could he too hear the maddening beating of the drums and the piping of Finn flutes? Had he indeed been there for 3,000 years? I will admit that the thought gives even a man such as myself pause. Had he felt the passage of time? Was he still himself, facing Azathoth and his court? The stones were there upon the altar he had wrought, 10 in all. Body of Azathoth, body of chaos. I approached and studied each in turn. There before me was a pantheon of the great old ones. I could feel their power emanating from the dull black stone. It was as if the Kitab al-Azif had birthed these statues from its moldering pages. I carefully lifted each stone and put them in my satchel. I paused at the entrance of the hut and watched as the face of the shaman shriveled. His features became less distinct beneath his blanket of dust, until he, too, was nothing more than floating motes on the evening breeze. I crossed the stone clearing and noted the Maasai remains were absent. One last glimpse of the hut as I began my descent showed me a slowly deflating structure. Not anything as crass as tumbling branches, stones, and fronds, but a slow disintegration into nothingness. Briefly, I wondered if I had inadvertently granted him final peace, or if I had jettisoned his soul to the deep dark, to truly sink into the murk outside space and time, where the outer gods wait, mindless and powerful. I must confess that I care not for a savage such as he, though I will admit I owe him a small debt of gratitude for keeping the stones safe for me for so very long.
After securing the stones, Millstone traveled from Central Africa to the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities in Cairo, where he met with James Quibble and Jahi Hawass. According to a letter from Quibble to a Boston contact, Millstone agreed to donate artifacts from earlier expeditions in exchange for Hawass bypassing standard customs and shipping the stones to Massachusetts. Millstone kept his word, arranging shipment from Arkham shortly after his return. A member of my team, Richard Blaine, later discovered those artifacts still crated in Cairo, forgotten in a storeroom some 40 years on. Hawass appears to have shipped the stones, though not to Arkham. Soon after, he vanished under suspicious circumstances. I suspect Winthrop's cult. It is possible Hawass recognized the stones' significance and withheld them, or intended to keep them himself. Millstone then disappeared for several years. He was dismissed from Miskatonic and traveled to Egypt. Rumors placed him dead in the Middle East. In 1926, Millstone resurfaced in Massachusetts, at odds with the Starry Wisdom cult and attempting to reform the Akadite order. Information derives from the journal of an unnamed Catholic priest, likely unstable, though his hostility toward Millstone appears genuine. The journal also references Houston Winthrop in Boston and Arkham, mentions Steele Gruber's grandfather, Red, and a Dr. Nathaniel Ward, maternal grandfather of John Ramsey, further justifying Winthrop's interest in bloodlines. The last confirmed sighting of Millstone occurred in the Soviet Union in 1933. According to a report recovered by a team member in the CIA, he boarded a train on the Trans-Siberian Railway. In the Ural Mountains, explosives detonated in his private car, ejecting him. A line worker reported to the OGPU that 2 American men fought Millstone and several henchmen before the explosion. The passenger car was detached prior to detonation, left the tracks, struck the mountainside, and fell at least 300 feet. Survival was deemed impossible. Descriptions of the Americans match Red Gruber and Dr. Ward. I believe Ward did not return to the United States. Whether taken by Soviets, Winthrop, or otherwise is unknown. Regardless, their actions likely prevented catastrophe. As a side note, by correlating undated entries from the aforementioned priest's journal with supporting archived newspapers on microfiche, I believe Winthrop attempted his first rending of the veil in November of 1941. The veil thinned, and elements of our world merged with the grim. It has been assumed that cities and artifacts fell through, but I dispute this. While on the other side, I encountered cities and landmarks that still exist in my dimension. I theorize that when the dimensions overlapped, an echo of our world remained after the veil healed. Non-organic matter was imprinted, and many people were also trapped there. This may explain the origin of the Nashka, those left behind, though it remains uncertain whether humans existed there prior to 1941. The United States entered the Second World War the following month, overshadowing reports of weather anomalies, radio and telephone interference, and missing persons. That moment has largely been forgotten outside those attentive to such matters. We know Winthrop eventually obtained the Azathoth stones, and this past year attempted a second mass rending of the veil using them, fortunately unsuccessfully. What we learned from that attempt is that the Azathoth stones prevent the veil from healing when it is torn. With this knowledge, keeping the stones out of Winthrop's hands is mandatory. At present, the stones' whereabouts are known only to team members Steele Gruber and John Ramsey. It is in our best interest to recover them, though both men are currently trapped on the other side. Addendum, November, 1973. Both Steele Gruber and John Ramsey are confirmed missing, deeply troubling given their connection to Winthrop, the bloodline, and the Stones, which are still unaccounted for. I have also learned that Millstone may have survived the 1933 incident and continued associating with Winthrop into the present, placing him in his 90s. The journal from which this information is drawn contains inconsistencies, incorrect names and ages, casting doubt on portions of its contents, though not all. If accurate, Millstone perished last year, ironically, in yet another explosion. At this point, I will consider him deceased only upon direct examination and post-mortem confirmation. Personal note: I can't shake the feeling that Millstone is still out there. In my line of work, you learn to distinguish between a closed tomb and an empty one. I am proceeding as if the latter applies. That internal voice I've learned to trust tells me he still has a role to play in events yet to unfold.